What's up guys, JonJonTheWise here, and I got another video for you guys. This time it's not just focused on Cyberpunk, it is on the subject of losing one of your players because they passed away. And I'm telling you, I looked all over the internet and I couldn't find any real help with this, any good insight. So I wanted to give you guys my insight on how we were successfully able to respectfully move on and to keep the game going. So hopefully I can give you guys insight into that matter. But first, make sure you guys sign up to the Discord. The link is in the description below. It is a Cyberpunk fan Discord, but we also talk about other tabletop games. And it's a community just waiting for you guys to join. Make sure you guys sign up to the podcast, Tabletop Cyberpunk, Spotify, iTunes, anywhere else you can find podcasts is where you can find it. I talk more about Cyberpunk, I talk more about other tabletop games, and I have really cool interviews, as well as a lot of my videos are uploaded onto that podcast. Of course, follow me on social media at JonJonTheWise. That's where you guys can connect with me and learn about updates to my channel and the different things that I'm doing. And of course, if you guys want to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/JonJonTheWise, where all of your money will go directly into helping with production value for all kinds of stuff that I'm doing. And I really appreciate all of my patrons out there that have been supporting. But if you can't support on the Patreon, liking, subscribing, commenting, it helps with the algorithm, so I greatly appreciate all of you doing that as well. All right, let's get into the video. So before we get into the crux of this video, I want to talk about the friend that I had that passed away. I know him as Twiggy. Many know him as Michael Loomis. Michael was a friend of mine that I connected with through my Patreon. He was one of the first patrons when I opened my Patreon. And when I gave access to a Patreon-only game, he was one of the first players to join that game. So he's very dear to my heart. We've had dozens of hours together playing Cyberpunk, and he's really overall just one of the coolest people I've ever met in my life. He's supported my channel, not just financially, but he's given me all kinds of ideas and help and feedback, and truly has been one of the best friends that I've ever had, and one of the best players that I've ever had as well. And, you know, I can't lie to you, it really messed me up losing him, and it affected all of us too, all of us in the game. So it was very difficult for us to try to figure out what to do. But I made a promise to everybody that I would make this video because I think there's other people out there that can maybe benefit from the kind of insight that I and my players have come across that maybe will be able to help you to move on and keep the fun going. I think the one thing that I'll miss the most about Twiggy is his goofy voices and his comedy and just the way that he uplifted everybody. He loved everyone, no matter who you are or where you're from. He was just open arms loving to everybody. He was a great part of our community as well. If you were on the Discord, he would chat with you and help you with your games. And overall, it's a big loss for our community and for our friend group to lose someone like Twiggy. So when we heard about Twiggy's passing, the first thing that we did and the first piece of advice that I can give you is we grieved. So grief is normal. Grief is just a normal thing that human beings go through when we experience loss, especially with somebody so close to us. So after hearing the news of his passing, we had a game coming up, and obviously we just canceled the game because we just had to deal with it. We had to deal with it internally. We had to cry. We had to talk to our own loved ones that can support us. And we just had to process the information that we lost our friend. So my first piece of advice to you is to make sure that you feel your feelings and to take time to do that, and make sure that everybody takes time to do that. If you're the game master and it's your game, cancel the next game. Tell everyone we're going to take a break and we'll come back as soon as everybody is willing to come back and have a chat. And that's my next piece of advice. I call it a session X because it's not 0, 1, 2, or 3. It's not some numerical value. It's a side session that needs to happen so everybody can come together and congregate. This serves many purposes other than, you know, discussing what we're going to do with the game, but it's also a great way for you guys to support each other and to have a chat. And that's basically what we did. We talked about all the things we loved about Twiggy, how much we're going to miss him. We held back tears. We laughed. We did all those things, you know, and I think it actually helped a lot. I know it helped a lot. I was going through a lot of emotions at the time. There was a lot of pressure on me as a game master to try to figure something out as well. I put the pressure on myself that, maybe I can bring some kind of happiness to this somber moment. And basically, us coming together and talking to each other and laughing and crying and doing all those things, it boosted our mental health. You might have a player that will decide that, they have to leave the group. And that's the case with me. One of my players decided that it just hurt too much, or there's too much going on in their life, and there was like a whole smorgasbord of things going on. And they realized that they didn't want to be a part of the group anymore. And that doesn't mean they're not part of our friend group. I still love them dearly, and the place is still open for them at the table, of course. But if you need time to get away from the game and you just can't come back, then I understand. This player that I'm talking about was one of the first players. Him and Twiggy and another player were my first 3 players when I opened this Patreon game to people. And I understand if it hurts too much. But let's say that some of your players decided that they do want to move on and they do want to play and they don't want to lose the game. And I don't think that's a selfish thing, A good game and a good gaming group is good for your mental health. It's a great outlet. So I think it's an overall positive thing if people want to keep playing in the game group. And I think it should be encouraged. So what do? Well, you got to get on the path of moving on. So, of course, the first thing I did was I basically laid it all out there. In our case, it was kind of the worst case scenario because Twiggy's character and the campaign were synonymous with each other. Everything was revolving around his character and his backstory and a corporate that basically wiped out his entire clan. He was a nomad. So we were all on kind of like this revenge mission trying to help him out. Of course, with his passing, it got a little complicated, it got a little messy, so we had to figure things out. The first thing I did was I asked my players, like, all right, guys, I'm open to all input. All right, we're gonna just lay it all out there. Let's talk about what ideas you have about moving on. And that was the best thing that I could have done because everybody offered really good insight, really good ideas. And, what's the one thing as game masters that we're always worried about? We're worried that we're not going to be able to interest our players in our ideas. So, of course, if they're coming up with the ideas themselves, all you have to do is explore them and add some twists and obstacles and some other stuff in between to try to make it a more interesting campaign. And, of course, in our case, we all knew in our hearts that Twiggy would want us to keep the game going. He wouldn't want us to stop playing because of something that happened, especially something out of our control. And with that in mind, we knew that we were doing the right thing by moving on and honoring his name. So basically, we talked out a way of how we were going to reset the campaign arc without ruining everything. We kind of fast forward some things. We talked that whatever place we were in the campaign, we just fast forwarded it, found a solution, and then came back to our home base, basically, of where everything began. And that reset gave us a clean canvas to be able to paint this new campaign on. In our case, all of my players decided that they want nothing more than to get revenge and to continue the legacy of the character that passed away. We obviously didn't kill the character. The character's still alive. He's out there somewhere because I don't think that's necessary. We don't need to kill the character. The character can live on. But the character was just too busy doing something else and basically entrusted the rest of the party to enact the things that they always wanted to do but aren't able to do because they have some kind of other prior obligation. And with that, the players realized, we're going to get this corporate, whoever he is, he's going down and his whole operation is going down and we're doing it for Twiggy. So now that I knew what my players wanted to do, it was up to me to try to make it happen. Make the structure happen from A to Z. And there's plenty of videos that I have and other YouTube content creators have out there to help you on creating your campaign. So it was nothing new to me to start a new campaign from zero. But I had kind of a special responsibility at this point. I had to make sure that this was going to be a good campaign, that it was going to start good and it was going to keep continuing on this path of being interesting and fun for all of my players. So I did what I know best, and I stuck to the basics. We are obviously playing Cyberpunk. If you guys are watching this video and you're not fans of Cyberpunk and maybe you wanted to check out what this subject would be about, but Cyberpunk has some basic things that make it Cyberpunk. There's guns, there's cyberware, there's nightclubs, there's a big city, there's corporations. So I added all of these elements together all into one. I made sure that my players started in a nightclub, which is the tavern equivalent of Cyberpunk. I made sure that there was some kind of conflict in the nightclub with some obvious baddies. Like, these are not ambiguous bad guys. These guys are bad guys, and no one's going to miss them if they're gone. And that gave the players the green light to basically just have fun whatever way they want to. They got into arm wrestling matches, they were drinking, they were throwing things around, and they even punched the cop at one point, which was very interesting. So after they had their fun and they did all the things that they did, I made sure that I brought in a plot point that was going to hook the players hook, line, and sinker. And I chose one of my characters who has an estranged father that we've always talked about through our campaign, and he's given me some backstory on this father of his. And the reason he is in the setting that we are in is because he's kind of looking for his father. And what better way to entice them all to grab onto my plot point than for him to see his father being carried away in handcuffs by police officers, hence the punching of the police officer. So fast forward, they both get arrested because of the incident, and now all the players are curious on why this character's father is here in the first place. And boom, we got our campaign up and running. Now I gotta tell you, we've been playing for quite some time now. It's been a few sessions since then, and everything has been great. We've been having a great time, and we're really back in the groove of things. Obviously, we still miss Twiggy, and we're still honoring him by going through the campaign and making sure that his character gets the vengeance he deserves. But it doesn't mean that we had to stop playing. It doesn't mean that it put a black mark on our game. Nothing like that at all. If anything, we've grown stronger with each other because we've gone through this struggle together. And I feel closer to my players than I've ever been before. We laughed and cried together throughout our campaign, and now we're laughing and crying together after a loss of a good friend. So to conclude, my main advice on how you can structure your campaign returning from the loss of a player is make sure you guys grieve, make sure you guys congregate after the grief and talk to each other, brainstorm ideas, and then make sure you go back to the basics of what that RPG is all about. If it's D&D, you start in a tavern, you're given a quest. If it's Cyberpunk, you start in a nightclub and you get into a fight with some booster gangers. Then, from there, after everybody's had their fun, give them the juiciest plot point from their backstory that you can think of. Now, my next piece of advice is kind of a little bit of an obvious thing, but I think it still needs to be mentioned. Obviously, if all of these things are not helping you and the loss is too great and you just can't find the way to smile again, then I highly recommend that you find professional help. It's out there. You got to find it some way, somehow. There's apps, there's doctors, there's even other family members. And if you need to take a break from the game, as I stated before, I think it's really important that you take the time to work on your mental health. So make sure you get professional help because you don't want this to be something that ruins your entire life. It's not what your friend would want. They would want you to be successful, healthy, and happy. And that's exactly what you need to do for yourself in honor of the friend that you lost. There are also plenty of groups out there of victims of trauma that can help you, support you. And if you're not finding that kind of support in your gaming group, and you notice that everybody else is kind of moving on and is having a good time and you're not, then I would highly recommend that you do something about it. Don't let it fester. Don't let it ruin your life. That's not what your friend would want, exactly as I said before. In truth and honestly, there's not much you can do to prepare yourself for a sudden loss of a friend. And there isn't really anything I can tell you to prepare you for the sudden loss of a friend. This video is basically just my advice and my own experience from what I went through personally. So if any of this advice does not ring true to you or you don't feel connected to it, then by all means, don't listen to anything that I have to say and do things the way that you need to for yourself. And my message to you, Twiggy, if you're out there, wherever you are, I just want to tell you that I miss you, I love you, and we're having a good time. So thanks for all the good memories that you've given us, and I hope to see you someday in the afterlife or wherever you may be. Alright guys, thank you for watching the video, thank you for supporting, and my heart goes out to you if you're dealing with this kind of situation yourself. Alright, much love, we'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you, bye.